everybody. In today's video, I thought I'd sit down and cover the basics, kind of how to apply eyeshadow, because I know that it can kind of be confusing, especially if you're a beginner and still trying to figure out like how to layer shadows and like what colors to choose from and things like that. So I wanted to sit down and just give you kind of my tips and tricks of what I have learned and what I use. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button and let's get into the video. First tip that I have when it comes to blending out your eyeshadow is having the right brushes to do so. So I usually keep like 2 fluffy brushes on hand, and then I keep maybe like a flat brush, that way I can like pack product on, and then maybe a smaller fluffy brush that I can be more precise but blend, and then sometimes a smudging brush, but you can even do that with just like a fluffy brush like this. So those are the 4 brushes that I like to keep on hand with me. You really probably only need 1 fluffy brush if you're not using so many eyeshadows, but I tend to use lots of different colors and shades and deep tones and lighter tones, so I use a lot of brushes just so that I don't mix my eyeshadows up. So the palette I'm going to be using today is my Matte Profusion palette. This has all matte shades. There's one like shimmer shade down here, but we're not going to use that. And there's just a lot of neutrals and some pink tones and deeper tones in here. So those are all the shadows we're going to be working with. Not all of them, but you know what I mean. We're going to be using a lot of just like neutral tones for this demonstration, I guess. I'm going to start out with one of my bigger fluffy brushes. Now, if you have clean brushes, you don't have to do this, but because I've used these brushes a couple times now, you can see one brush is like darker than the other brush. So I'm going to use the brush that is lighter, because that's what I've been using my transition shade for. Transition shade is usually a shade that's your skin tone, but like maybe a shade darker. It's, you know, or you can even just use something that's your skin tone for your transition shade, just to help your shadows blend easier. So today I'm going to be using this color right here called Polite. It's kind of a off-white peachy tone. I don't know if you just look at the picture for a minute here. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to dip into it. And I'm going to tap. You can see all that flew off. You don't want to apply all that to your lid, because then it's easier to go in with less and then add more as you need it, rather than going in with more. So I tap that off. I'm going to tap it off a couple times more. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at so here's your lid, kind of where that crease starts. Underneath your crease, that's your lid. And then this is like above your crease. So we're gonna go above our crease. And what I like to do is like right at where my nose like ends, that's where the shadow is going to start and stop. So I'm gonna blend there. And sometimes what I like to even do is I'm like looking in the mirror at the same time. What I like to do sometimes is I like to go like in here, in this area right here. It just kind of blends everything together, and I think it looks pretty good with your transition shade. It just blends everything together, and that way you don't have this weird like separation between your eyeshadow and your like the corner of your eye. Now that you have kind of the starting point, you're gonna kind of bring it down. And if you wanted to, you could cover your whole lid with your transition shade. I'm not today. I'm not going to bring it all the way down, but I am going to bring it down enough to that crease. Another thing when you're blending eyeshadow out is to hold your brush like this, so you have a looser grip and so you get a nice even blend. Whereas if you hold it like this, you're not going to get as much of a flawless blend. It's going to be really pokey and jabby and things like that. So I would suggest holding your brush a little looser down to the bottom of it, so that way you have a little less control, which I think people are scared of that. They think that if they don't have control over their brush, then their eyeshadow is going to be a mess. But I mean, it does take practice, so just practice it, but it is a lot easier when you give it a little leeway. As you can tell, my eyes probably don't look any different. They probably just look like my eyes were before. And that's the whole point of transition shade, is it's not to immediately add color to your eye. It's just to help put it on a base coat so that way your shadows blend easier. And a lot of people, they just apply their concealer and powder and then go in and do that, or just like use eye primer. For me, that's not how I do it. I like it doing this way, so but you can do however you feel you're comfortable with. Now we're at the point is where we are going to start adding color to the eye, but we're going to do it in layers, light and getting darker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this shade right here called Top Notch. It's just a light brown. And I'm going to take my other fluffy brush, the one that had a little bit darker on it, and I'm going to go in there. Just gonna apply it to the brush, and then I'm gonna tap. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to apply this right underneath the transition shade that we put on it. So basically you're applying the exactly where you put that transition shade, but a little bit lower, so that way you're not completely covering that transition shade. So I don't know if you can see difference now between this eye and this eye. So this is the one that I just applied the Top Notch shade to, and this one just still has that transition shade. But if you look really closely, you can see that there's a little bit more depth and darkness to this eye rather than this eye. And that's what you want. You don't want to go bold in with the colors. You want to just build it up lightly at a time. And you may find that just putting that first layer on is good for you. I'm going to go in with another layer of Top Notch. Just tap the brush off. And then I'm just going to go over that same shade. Okay, so now you probably will be really able to see a difference between this eye and this eye. This has the second layer of Top Notch on it, and this is still just the transition shade. And you can see there's a little bit more depth in the eye. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into my smaller fluffy brush that I can be a little bit more precise with, and I'm going to go into this shade right here called a Doll, which just is a little bit deeper of a shade than Top Notch that we use down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip into that shade, tap it off, and I'm going to keep this in the outer edge. So I'm going to go in like halfway in the crease, but keep it out on the outer edge. So now once I've applied that and blended out a little bit, I'm now going to take my brush and I'm just going to start kind of blending it up. Kind of blending it into the other shades. Alright, so there is a lot more depth now that I put that other shade on there, and this still just is a transition shade. So building it up slowly and slowly is really going to help you build your look up. And really layering your colors is really going to add an effect of depth and dimension. Alright, so now I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to go into a little bit of a deeper shade now. And I think I'm going to go into this shade right next to Doll called Adventurous. It has a little bit more of an orangey tone to it. And I'm going to take my flat brush and I'm going to dip it into the shade. And I'm going to pat it. I mean, you can see right now that's too much product. So I'm going to tap it off. That still might be a little too much product, so we're going to tap it off again and again. Okay, so there's barely any, it's less, I mean, you can still see it, but there's less, but you can tap it off even more if you want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to apply it to the outer corner of my eye. Yeah, creating a V shape with it, so like I'm going onto the lash line and then I'm kind of going up and then going back to the lash line, so I'm kind of creating a V. Alright, so now I'm going to go back into the other brush that we just used and I'm going to start to blend that in with the other shades. Alright, so now that we have those shades on, eye that has eyeshadow on it, and this is basically our bare eye. This does have transition shade on it, but it still looks pretty bare. So now you can see there's a lot more depth to this eye by layering on those colors. Now, as you play around and get better at it, you will start playing with colors and like different ways like cut crease and things like that. And there's different ways of applying eyeshadow, but this is kind of a basic of how to apply your eyeshadows to create depth and dimension And so now I'm going to go in with a shimmer shade. I'm just actually going to be using my highlight palette from e.l.f. shade right here. This is the deepest shade in here. I'm just going to go in with my finger, and I'm just going to apply this to the inner corner of my lid. I'm not going to go all the way out because I want to keep that depth, that deepness that we have going on in the outer corner. Now that I have that shimmer shade on, I could end here, but what I'm actually going to do is, my eye shape is a little weird, and so sometimes the colors don't get all the way up as high as I want them to. So I'm going to go back into the deeper shades like Top Notch and Doll that we use and bring it up a little bit. That way I can create a little bit more of dimension in my eye. All right, so you can see as it was before, it was a little bit lower on my eyelid, and so it only really created depth like right here. So it kind of actually made my eye look small, but now that I've raised that color up a little bit more, my eye looks bigger. So now what you can do is you can add your eyeliner or your mascara or whatever, and you'll be done with your eyelid. Now, there are other ways of applying and layering eyeshadow that I'll be more than happy to show you, but this is like the beginner's guide almost. This is like the simplest way to apply your eyeshadow, and I use this every day. I don't really change anything up really unless I'm doing like a cut crease or a halo eye or something like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not subscribed, and click that notification bell and you'll be notified every time I upload future videos. I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next channel.